Welcome to Brick by Brick, episode 21. Today is a conversation with Molly O'Shea. She's the founder of Sourcery, which is a Substack newsletter. She has posted it every single week for 4 years now. And as a result, she's got 6,000 subscribers. And I have a small hunch that that's going to be the start of the that comes after lots of compounding. So yeah, go and check out her links. They'll be in the description. And enjoy the conversation. Thank you for watching Brick by Brick. Welcome to the podcast, Molly. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Ollie.
So I wanted to talk to you today because I discovered your incredible newsletter and I've been using it nonstop just to do research, get sales leads, all of the above. Can you explain a bit about what the newsletter is about and maybe a bit of the numbers and also how consistently you've posted on it over the past 4 years or 3 years?
Yeah, so the newsletter is Sourcery. It's Sourcery.vc. Highly recommend you subscribe to it. But I started this around 4 years ago when I was working at an early stage venture capital fund in New York City. That fund's called TMV. And I did it originally internally for the team just to make sure that we all knew that highlights of the week, like the trends, the companies, the deals that were being funded. It was really just a way to educate the team and make sure that we were on top of what's going on in the world. I guess to backtrack, Sourcery is a deal announcements newsletter, and we also cover tech trends. Every now and again, I do offer some opinions, and it's growing right now. We got to about 5K subscribers just completely organically earlier this year or last year, and now we've hit 6K, and that just became more of taking time to focus on it and share it, which is great. But yeah, so to go back to how it started, I started it at TMV. We did it internally. It actually was once a day. So we did it every day, and that was really exhausting. I didn't publish it publicly then, so we were just doing it internally, and I would go around and I would look at all of the deals that were happening, and I would put them in, an email format for our team. And then once Substack came around, I was like, okay, let's put this in a nice clean format. So I did that, and then I secretly was sending it around to my friends, and they loved it. So then they were sending it around to their friends. Long story short, a year later, I started to publicly publish it, and it kind of caught on from there. Being in the early venture capital scene, it's very community driven, and people constantly share things with one another and they talk. It's very networking based. It just kind of took on organically from there, and I don't know why, but I once I commit to something, I'm all in it. So here we are, 4 years later, I'm still doing it, and I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm writing a newsletter, I'm a newsletter writer. This is a thing now. People are making businesses off of it, and I just this is a side hobby that that's just created now almost a side business. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's sick, and kudos to you, because since I started this podcast, I was like, I'm going to do it every week forever. And then after 2 months, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. And I've had breaks since then. So the fact that you've done it every single week is nuts to me. I think I feel like in this time, consistency is such a good skill to have in the world of the internet. It can really set you apart from everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I think once I started to get over 1,000 subscribers and all of that, it was it's part of my job, right? It's part of my job as a venture capitalist to know what's going on. It's good for me to just organize it. I'm not just scraping things. I'm looking at them. I'm looking at the websites. I'm understanding these companies that are getting funded, and then putting it to use and sharing it with people. So it's a benefit. There's really no downside for it for me and this. But yeah, the more subscribers I get, the more I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna have to keep this up. I can't stop. Does anybody want to buy this? No, I just gotta. It's cool. It's a nice brand, and people do kind of recognize me from it. which has gotten kind of weird. Like there was someone who walked into our office like last spring when I was at Upfront Ventures, and they're like, "Oh, you're Molly, like you write Sourcery," and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's me," and they're like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Oh my God, that's not how you're supposed to respond." But yeah, it's cool. Like there's recognition with it. Once you keep up with something, you're consistent, you're publishing it publicly, like the compounding effects of that do take off, and it is helpful. Especially in the world of VC, it's like people really care about branding and they care about like being relevant. Luckily, like I have a platform that keeps me relevant, kind of. Like I would say I'm irrelevant, but like it keeps me kind of relevant like once a week.
Has it led to many connections with new people?
Yeah, it's great. Some people will reply directly off of the newsletter. Some people reach out to me on Twitter. You reached out to me. So it's like it's a great benefit. Like once you're putting stuff out there, kind of people will come to you. They'll be like, "Oh, hey, like I really liked, this piece or your opinion on that, or actually you were totally wrong and I think you're crazy." There's some where I talk about like a little bit more controversial stuff, like why I think TikTok should be banned. And then people are like, "You're insane. Why should this be banned?" Well, I don't know, like look it up. But but it definitely creates more connections. Um, I've been able to like grow my community here in LA, keep my communities in New York. I lived in New York before, I lived in Miami before, I go up to the Bay all the time. But it's a good like forcing function to just kind of keep social and um, do work.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like it when you put your opinions in, actually. I feel like it makes it more like, I don't know, I just like reading human things. Sometimes the stronger the opinion, the more I'm like intrigued, especially as like there's so much cookie cutter content out there now.
Yeah, I get that. Like I love when I have a hot take on something. Sometimes I have to reel it back because I do work in a professional industry and I work for people. I'm not like heading a fund. So some people do have all of the glory to do that in the platform. Like my friend Delian at Founders Fund, he's able to really talk about whatever he wants. Um, but I try to keep it a little bit more uh, mellow, I would say.
What's your hottest take at the moment?
I think my hottest take is that like maybe 70 to 80% of companies are gonna disappear.
That's pretty hot.
Pretty hot. But as you can like see with all the tech funding in the last couple of years from ZERP and all that jazz, um, funding was really cheap and access to capital was like abundant. Anybody could really access it. And within an industry that is so competitive, people like to do deals and then people like to talk about their deals and then people feel pressure about doing more deals, so then you have this like cascading effect of a virtuous cycle of funding things, and you lose sight of maybe the macro of, oof, this category might not exist in XYZ years because we didn't do research on the infrastructure layer, or unfortunately, like, yeah, most of these AI companies are now being directly taken out by OpenAI and Meta and Google on the daily. And they have the distribution and the platform to do it. So it's like, like we were completely overfunded. We had too many companies getting funding that shouldn't have gotten funded. It's extremely hard to run a business. It's extremely hard to like grow a business and like hire the right people. And then on top of that, it's like a lot of these things are going to disappear just by the fact. And I'm sorry I'm laughing, but it's just kind of crazy. They're just going to disappear because all of maybe I'm like an AI doomer in that respect, but they're just going to disappear because there's going to be so many free accessible tools that are doing exactly what they might have gone out to do, which makes them like really prime for talent or acquisition for people that don't have that. But I think it will be kind of hard to just grow on their own.
Mm. Yeah, it's been crazy. Like I would see like a YC announcement of a new like AI company that translates video, and then bang, next day Spotify has like rolled it out across the world, and it's just like every day something like that happens where one of the bigger players just wipes out like Although at the same time, I've been saying this or thinking this for a while now. Some of those, obviously SaaS became such a hot category, and I feel like it's kind of reached its peak, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because people can redirect their talents to more interesting problems.
I mean, I think like SaaS will always exist. People build businesses online, people start new companies all the time. There's always going to be a need for these tools. And as things change, as infrastructure changes, there's just going to be new spaces to go after to solve for. If it's in the cloud computing space or in the chip manufacturing space, there's going to be more ways to optimize things or just do things differently that might be more efficient. Um, I'd say for the most part, like SaaS tools, like anything that's like a tool is going to have a harder time because that is a commodity. Um, and you can make it probably with GPT, or any of these like really free accessible like solutions. But I don't know. I'm like highly optimistic about the large SaaS players because, now they have an opportunity to like make their businesses much more efficient. Um, Maybe that's by getting rid of the middle layer of employees that are probably sitting around and not doing as much as they should or could be doing like 10 times more. I see this with some people, and I know some people that work at companies that are just like, we just kind of hop on calls and um, do replicable work. And I think like that kind of business is gonna probably degrade, and then we'll just have more optimized, like more efficient businesses, more efficient like workforces. But that's not to say like I don't think like SaaS is gonna entirely disappear. I just think it's gonna look different. And I think that the big players will benefit massively because they have the data and they have the platforms to distribute better tools and better services.
Yeah, definitely. The data thing is definitely massive, and you see that people like Spotify, like it's a game changer. I'm interested to know about your background. So you're currently doing this, but where did you grow up in America, and what was your family like, and then what was your sort of early career roughly?
Yeah, so I have like the most nonlinear path and story ever. I grew up in Westport, Connecticut. I'm the youngest of four. My whole family's in like marketing, advertising. My oldest brother works for DraftKings. Everyone else kind of works for an ad agency or some sort of agency. My mom's an interior designer and builder. Quite the creative group. I grew up with that, and I was quite talented in art and design, and I thought I was going to become an architect. Like, fully love building houses, being around that, smelling sawdust. It's great. Um, and I went, to like a summer program at USC. I did another summer program in college in London. We were talking about earlier, um, and to study that, but I got to college. I went to NYU. I got there for art. So I was studying studio art. I majored in design and entrepreneurship. I started a company while I was there, and that was kind of like combining the entrepreneurial aspects and then the design aspects. Like, I'm in New York City. It's awesome. I've got access to the fashion district. I created a sports bra company, and like it was using um, silver ionic plated materials. It was supposed to deflect like cell phone radiation. It was super scientific and like nerdy. And I did a whole like independent study on RF radiation, which I think the people in the hard tech community now like would love to hear. But it was much more on like the fashion side and less so on like the space radiation and like satellite side. So I went to NYU, I studied studio art, design, and I really got into entrepreneurship, started a company. Um, from there, I'd say like the biggest pivotal moment in my career in this whole journey, and that's why I'm kind of starting there, is because I started in a creative area, but I got really interested in business. I love entrepreneurship. I was always starting businesses as a child, whether it was middle school or high school. Like, I was creating stuff and I was selling it, and like I loved that process. Um, So while I was at NYU, I actually worked for Google 30 weeks. It was their incubator for designers. I was a project manager there. And we were just helping 13 world-class designers create companies. One of the coolest companies that came out of that was called Lightphone. And it's like very relevant now because everyone's glued and addicted to their cell phones. And this is the antithesis of that. It's like literally just like you can only call people on it. There's nothing else. That it's just a calling device. No widget.
It has a big red button on the back, so if he falls over, like, call or press for help.
Yeah. You have two options. You either call someone or you just get help. So that was cool, but because I was there, like I got exposure to the venture capital on the team, the venture capitalist on the team, and I was like, holy crap, like I'm building a company, but this guy, he funds companies for a living and he learns their business models. Like I don't really know what I'm doing. Like I'm a sophomore in college and I'm starting a company. Like I want to build a huge business, but I don't really know how that works. It'd be awesome if I could be in venture capital and learn how business models work, learn how businesses are run, how they grow, how they recruit talent, all that jazz. So I got obsessed with venture capital, and then I completely made that my like target. I went after it. I graduated early. I worked for a family office down in Miami that did like a bunch in venture capital. They were like one of the first secondary investors into Facebook and like Twitter and all that stuff. So I got exposure there. I came back to New York and worked for a pre-IPO fund and did, late stage enterprise software investing. And from there, I've just been at a couple different firms. I'd like to say like I did like an accelerated course in this side of the alternative asset class because I worked really balanced across early and growth stages at this point. I've even been on the LP side at a corporate venture fund. So it's been a lot of fun. Like I've learned a ton. I've probably looked at thousands of companies. I've certainly talked to thousands of companies. And that's why I'm also excited about like doing a podcast because if you call and you have Zoom calls with founders all day, you start to understand like how to have a good conversation. And so it'll be cool to like share more of that. But to bring it back to present day, so I had a 2-year role at Upfront. That's a standard thing for them. They've been running it for a while. It ended in, like late last year. And since then I'm like, okay, like I have some time. I've been running Sourcery for about 3 years, and I haven't had the time to like actually professionalize it, make sure that it looks good, see if like I have engaging audience members that I can monetize it. Like there are people building real businesses out of newsletters. It could be cool if I did that, and I love to do it. It's something I look forward to every week. It keeps my mind active. It's very part of like the venture capital world. So hopefully that's not too boring, but that's my story.
No, that's really cool. And it's so interesting that I would say it's kind of like a that's such a hard word, multidisciplinary life when you study something and then you kind of not switch sides, because design and business I think are quite close, but it's cool that you've had two different viewpoints to look at, and I'm sure you can draw parallels between them.
Yeah, I think if you're able to go from one part of the world to another, or one category to another, you develop this amazing skill of transferable knowledge and connecting the dots and just starting to see patterns and things. And so that maneuverability just makes you really well, I'd say, trained to adapt to different environments. I like see so many connections in so many different areas because I've taken the time to like look at the high level and see, oh, okay, like this business model looks exactly like this business model, and like consumer investing could be a little bit similar to enterprise investing. The more time I've spent in different areas, the more I've been able to build up this muscle of just like seeing connections and things, and not in like a delusional sense, but like actually like, oh, like there's a strategic component here, like we could probably find a partnership, or like I remember this team there, and they were working on this, and this could potentially be applicable for that, like that kind of stuff. So I think increasing exposure to anything and like just opening your eyes and like being more open-minded does like help a lot in the long term.
Yeah, it's funny you say the thing about it sounds delusional, but it's not, because I feel like there's a stage in like your growth where your results lag behind what you're actually doing today, and other people's opinions don't catch up. So at points you feel like you can definitely connect the dots, but you haven't got any way to show that yet. So it has a bit of a weird feeling. Like when I tell people who I would consider people who don't use Twitter basically, and they're just like they're just engaged in the real world. They don't know what a newsletter is or why it's important or how it could be a business. And I just find it very hard to like communicate. I guess I've got to the point where I'm like, I don't really try to communicate it anymore. I just say like I work online. I do a few different things. Do you find that with like family members and things like that, or are you so embedded in VC that it's quite everyone understands?
I think like my family has given up on trying to understand what I do.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I kind of won in that respect. It's like they're not going to question what I'm doing. Who knows what the hell I'm doing? Like I travel very often. I go random places um to them because, some people don't move that much, or like they don't talk to that many people, and I'm like, I have like friends here and friends there, and they're like, what do you mean, like who are these friends? Like I don't know who you're talking about. I'm like, well, like I meet so many people all the time. Like I keep up with them, and yeah, when I go to a city, I'll have some friends there already because I've talked to founders, I've talked to investors. And the online world is very beneficial in that respect. I wasn't really active on Twitter until this summer, and I was like, well, here we go. Like, let's test this out. Like, let's pretend I'm like trying to understand this for the first time. And like they open source the model, and so like I gamified it a bit. But I was like, holy crap, like there are so many audiences everywhere, and there's so many people in the world in general, and they're finding all these communities all over the place. And there are so many different ways to make money and so many different kinds of people to surround yourself with. That why not just like explore them and like find where you like and what you like to do. And there's usually a lot more answers to that than people think. And it just takes like research, exploration, going on the internet, finding your corner of the interweb, and like doing it that way. But I mean, I have fun with it, especially like a part of the job of being a venture capitalist is like finding everything in any part of like the category that you're going after. If like you like this company, well, you got to go look at every single company around it and how they kind of built, or like what their strategies were, or if it didn't work, like why. And it just increases your exposure and your knowledge and your learning of pretty much everything. And it's just like a continuous like engagement loop. It's fun. So at that point, like that's just how my brain works. But I love it, and no one really knows what I do, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think the internet and curious people is like the perfect match, because you can just find, as you say, like the most incredible little pockets of knowledge. And I was reading an old essay by a guy called Buckminster Fuller. It's called The Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. And he talks about the first pirates, the ones who ruled the seas. They would leave on a boat and come back years later with gold and spices and food and people. And people's probably one of the dodgier ones there. You know what I mean? Like in a good way. Not, but it's kind of the same on the internet. Those who do explore the internet are coming back like into their real life and their families and stuff, and they've found a piece of knowledge that has allowed them to use their time in a new way. And I find that so exciting, and I just wonder what stops more people from doing it. Like part of the thing I enjoy about this podcast is my friends do listen to it, so I'm slowly like red pilling a lot of my friends. They're like, oh, I didn't know that was even possible. So I like that, but I wonder Do you think that is curiosity is the main thing that divides people in terms of using the internet or not? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Possibly. I mean, I think a lot of like learning new things comes down to like a little bit of awareness and exposure, and most people don't do things unless they see someone do it, or they've, been inspired by something. So it takes a little bit of like an educational curve to like know what other kinds of communities exist out there. Or, if you're looking for a job, it's like, what other kinds of like sales jobs exist out there? Like, could I do medical device sales online and work from home? Sure, you'd probably make a lot of money. Or could you like sell houses and like all that kind of stuff? So just kind of the navigation of all of it is quite curious. And I think it takes a curious person to like open their mind up to think like, I'm kind of bored with just the mundane every day, like things I'm exposed to. There's so much to explore online. Um, whether it's just catering to your own interests or finding new ones. Um, I've been seeing like some people I interact with on Twitter or like college students, and they're feeling like lonely. They ask for help of like how to talk to people. And I'd say like I kind of grew up as like an introvert, but like working in this industry, like you're forced to be an extrovert and go to networking events and meet people. And so I've just built up a muscle from that and like kind of learned like, oh, hey, hi, how are you doing? Like, how are you doing? Like, what brought you here? Like, um, and reach out. And so I think it takes like awareness and getting to know things and like seeing people do it right. And so like just because, or I guess like you're a great example of that. You started this podcast and now your friends are like, oh wow, like this is really interesting. Like this is a different medium of, I'd say, like entertainment, or it's like an alternative to music, or watching Netflix or something like that, and it's educational and you're connecting with people and you're learning about new things. And it's not just, I mean, Love is Blind is a really interesting show, but I was watching it last night with my sister and I was like, holy crap, like, oh, this is like weird brainwashing stuff. But it's just like another form of medium, and you're out there and you're exposing that to people, and it's great. Like I'm like totally a huge fan of the podcasting world, and I'm totally addicted to it too, so that's biased. But it just definitely takes some curiosity and like exposure.
Yeah, and definitely also another thing I would say is like if you've got a 9 to 5, it can potentially be hard, depending on what it is, to have the free time to just explore what you're interested in. So I feel like not enough people are aware of how much bandwidth gets taken up by having like a normal 9 to 5. And since I left, I feel like I've just I'll have a random day where I just get super excited about one thing and I'll go really far down a rabbit hole, and that gives me a lot of joy and new information that I wouldn't have otherwise touched upon. Do you think that does that play into how you think about things? Like, are you someone you're obviously a very curious person and a hardworking person. You know how like Naval talks about keep free time and keep an uncluttered calendar to just think. Do you ever spend any time just sort of bored or not thinking about anything or going for walks or not talking?
Yeah, I definitely like pack my schedules during the weekdays, but on the weekends, I really don't do much. I love going for long walks. I will go for a walk for like 2 hours, 3 hours. Like I'm not even kidding.
Yes.
I live by the beach, and so it's great. It's like endless terrain to explore, or go on hikes with friends and just completely unplug. By the way, like just because I'm very online doesn't mean that I like it. Like sometimes I'm like my eyes are burning, like get me off of here. Um, but I think like the more time you spend uh doing something or understanding it, the more efficient you get. And so I've just become pretty efficient with what I do. Especially with the newsletter and stuff. It's like I've kind of gotten that down to a science. Sometimes it's entirely frustrating and I don't want to do it, but like no, I just have the discipline to keep on doing it because I feel some sort of responsibility. Um, But I definitely unwind a lot. Like I'm pretty mellow person. I don't really go out and party much. I'd say I'd do that like once. I go out to events like probably once a quarter. But I try to make as much time for myself and like just being present with my friends and my family as much as I can.
Yeah, that's so nice. Think I saw a tweet saying you don't drink. Are you still not drinking?
I don't really drink. I never really did. In like high school, not much. In college, not much. In college, I was a total nerd. Like I really didn't go out. Um, and then yeah, just like I just don't really like. Sometimes I'll have a cocktail like maybe like once a month or so, and like that's fun. Like I think it's fun. Um, but it's not something that's like in my routine, so I don't think about it much. Um,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, and it's cool because like LA, it's more accepted. Like people don't really question that in LA, but in New York, it's like, why aren't you drink? Like, what are you doing? Like that culture is so fueled on alcohol, and maybe London's the same. You guys have lots of pubs, but like here in LA, it's like, oh, whatever. Like, go have a seltzer.
Yeah, it's definitely the same. I feel like I have to be more selective with where how I choose to spend my time when I do go out, because there's like certain people, certain places where I just feel like the environment is everything screaming at me, just have one, just have one. So I'd rather just like completely avoid it. But I've definitely
Yeah.
found recently, um, maybe it's because of being online so much. I agree with you. I don't. If there was a different way to interface with the internet, like maybe AR would be good at this. I would love that, because sitting behind a screen all day, I do not like doing that. I'd love being outside. Um,
Mm.
but as a result of that, I feel like I've spent a lot more time thinking about and learning more like mindfulness stuff, and going back to spend more time with my family is something that I'm more and more compelled to do. Do you find that as well? I noticed you went on a big trip with your dad, and you always talk about your family and friends. So you seem quite close to them. So would you say you're like aware of your
Yeah.
spirit and feeding that? Because I don't think anyone really talks about that.
Well, I mean, so like part of that, and why I like to share that stuff on Twitter and stuff too is like a little bit intentional, but also it's just something I totally love. So like typically people like to share what they love. Um, Most people on Twitter and on the internet don't really go like outside of the internet. It's just what I've found. It's like they're very, very online. It's like even in the fall when Elon was like, go touch grass, like, you know, people were still online. Like they're addicted to it. Like it's very addicting. It's like you find like this comfortable space online and you might not feel comfortable like making more friends or like spending time with your family and that kind of thing. So I think it's just like an important thing to be conscious of sharing about and like setting a good example of. Um, People like it's easy to kind of lose sight of those things, but those are like very important aspects of being human. It's that personal connection, it's making IRL friendships, it's going places, it's doing things. Um, yeah, I did that trip with my dad, which was amazing. It's like how many people actually do one-on-one trips with one of their parents? When I graduated, it was like the number one thing that I was asking for. I was like, hey, like do you want to go on a trip, like a father-daughter trip? And he was like, yeah, sure. And, you know, he's probably thinking like, you know, we're going to go to like Texas or something. And I was like, no, I want to go to Asia. Like, I want to go, like, all of my friends at NYU and in my school were from Korea. They were from China. They were from Japan. And I was like, I want to go there. Like, I've been so exposed to this side of the world. Like I love, you know, the zenness about it. Like let's do that. And he was like, okay. Like so then we did it and we made like tons of memories. We went to Hong Kong, we went to Tokyo, Seoul. One of my really good friends from college is from Seoul, and her family started one of the first ramen noodle companies out there. And we went out to their farm, and it was just like an amazing experience. So like I think to go back to that, like I think it's really important to just kind of promote like IRL stuff, quality time with friends, and family. Like at the end of the day, like human connection is a really special thing. And maintaining those relationships is great, whether it is in like your personal life or in business. Taking the time to do that is important in the grand scheme of things, and not being alone on your computer every day, you know. Not that I'm saying everyone does that, but sometimes, you know, it feels good to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Some of the best experiences I've had have been from the combination of in real life and the internet. So I reckon I'm probably about 60-40 split. I spend a lot of time like going out and meeting people and trying to do stuff in real life for that reason, because it's so much more visceral. Like it's more intellectually
Mm.
stimulating on the internet, but it's more spiritually stimulating in real life. And it definitely gives me creative inspiration and energy, and things like that. I wanted to ask you about the age of AI, which is coming. I've had this conversation with a few people on the podcast. Where's the next moat if AI is going to take over a lot of creative jobs and software jobs and written jobs? What do you think is like the next thing? I have some ideas, which is why I think you're an interesting person to ask.
So are you asking if those jobs are going to get taken away, or like what happens after they're
So
taken away?
over the next 10 years, let's say AI augments and helps with lots of work, whether it's like creative work, whatever. What's going to be the thing that people compete over? What's like the bit where you can stand out? Where can you make a difference and have like high impact?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think in terms of like creative industries, what you're doing now in this podcast, and building your own brand is going to be important. Like let's let's talk before we talk about all of the fake AI like creators that like come to be. Um, but authenticity and real brand building and that trust is going to be important. Like I don't think humans are going to get removed from that. There's always going to be space for, you know, someone with a loyal, trusted community and the audience that they have. Um, or like maybe they're just a really good writer and like people love their writing and like they've been following them for a while. Um, I think if you're able to build like a really good personal brand in that world, like you're gonna be okay. For more of the services and stuff that are commoditized, they're usually commoditized on the earlier stages. So it's like the entry level jobs, like you can kind of outsource it. But I guess what I mean is like a graphic designer and like that kind of stuff, it's really easy to make that now, unfortunately. Like lots of these tools are optimized. I yeah, so I think like in order to like continue that mode, it's like you just have to double down on yourself and like everything that you're building and create a really good, loyal like audience around it. Um, for like other technology, I don't know. There is obviously like a lot going on and it's moving super fast. Like I don't think anybody really knows what the architecture of the internet's going to look like. I did a bunch of research in AI infrastructure like this past fall, and you know, it went from generalized models to specialized models to, oh my gosh, now we're going to own the end-to-end stack and we're going to create our own chips, and these chips need to be more efficient because the margins on Nvidia's chips are like they're gargantuan and they're making so much money off of this, and like, you know, we're doing billions of dollars in AI compute, and like let's just make a more efficient chip. So more people are owning that stack like end to end, and that's giving them a moat. But it's also it really all like it comes down to distribution and like having a really good following and like brand loyalty, whether it's an enterprise company or like a consumer brand. People just like to follow good people. And so that helps. But TBD, I think that's a huge question. I don't know. But when it all comes down to it, I really bet on the people behind things, and like if they have adaptability to like maneuver with it, because who knows, maybe podcasting isn't going to exist in like a year. I doubt that. But like we're now like distributing across so many different channels and platforms that you just have to keep up with it and like find the audience there. Like you never know, like your audience might be on Reddit, like, or it could be on like some random platform, but it's takes a lot of testing, and I have no idea.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd say I agree with pretty much most of that. I found I do lots of freelance design work, and I also have like a storytelling element where like I work with founders like through their pitches and like what's the narrative they're drawing on. And more people are starting to come trying to find like authenticity, because like corporate jargon doesn't move people. And then I spent some time over the last week thinking about how I can really position my service to actually make a difference to founders' companies. There's so many creative agencies out there which charge huge sums of money.
Yeah.
And I get it, because you need work that's high quality, and some companies can't risk a fuck up, so they are happy to pay for it, and that's completely valid. But I was thinking like, what is actually going to move the needle for companies? And I came back to the same word, which is like distribution, which is why I find your newsletter interesting, because a feature in Sourcery could move the needle hugely for a business. I don't know if you saw the announcement for Northwood Space and Bridget Mendler. Like that's an example. I'm sure that's going to happen way more. Like celebrities and people with big followings will come in, who have got like a passion for something, will come in and like start big companies. And I think that's unreal, because it's bringing eyes into like the space industry, which I love, because I think that's going to be the future.
Yeah, I think like over the next couple of weeks, like I'm gonna be experimenting with a couple of different things in the newsletter that I have the distribution, like like the audience I have is actually like very high quality because it's been word
Yeah.
of mouth from the beginning. Then I started in New York. It's a lot of people in finance, it's a lot of VCs. I have CEOs in there. I have CEOs of banks. Like I have LPs, family offices, and that kind of thing. So like the audience is super high quality, and I'm so open-minded about testing anything. And I've had different opportunities with friends who are doing things, building things. And I'm like, hey, like I'm happy to throw this in Sourcery if you want. And they get leads out of it, and they get customers, and they get recognition, and it's awesome to see. Like I love helping friends. And then like even more recently, like I, playing with Twitter, like I don't really take it too seriously. But I did tweet something, and this brand found it, and the brand's called Supergut, and they're like a prebiotic fiber company. They help you feel full, like so you don't eat too much. They have these like amazing bars that I got my parents like hooked on, because I'm like, you guys need to be healthier, like go through this experience. But so they like found one of my tweets, they loved it, they incorporated it, made an Instagram ad out of it, and like they did over 4 million impressions. And every time they run that ad, it is like 3 times more effective than their other ads. It's really crazy, the ROI and like the very low CAC that they have on it. They like sell out of their inventory, and it's great. So I've been like starting to incorporate stuff like that into the newsletter, and like sharing those stories, because I think they're really helpful. But there's so many different ways to monetize things. I do have paid subscriptions. There's going to be more content that I put out that will be opinion based, or like state of the market, or like even analyst kind of reports that I want to put out. And just kind of like test the waters on how to monetize, and like what the best ways to monetize are, especially with an online business like that. And it's really cool. I think it's fun. Like I'm so like interested and curious of testing things. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be very fun. I did a podcast with a guy called Alex Lehman a few months ago, and he made a Riz GPT, not a Chat GPT wrapper, which is like to help Riz girls on Tinder, or boys, depends. You like copy paste, and put it in, and the AI reads it and gives you a line to say back. I don't know if you saw it on my podcast feed, but you would never believe he got 1 million downloads in 3 months by matching the product launch with a viral TikTok campaign and working with TikTok influencers. And the K factor was just ridiculous. And now he's like taking that approach to building new products with his team, where they test a few content ideas on TikTok, and when they see something that could run, they'll build a product to fit the TikTok rather than build a product and then see if it fits, which I think is an interesting approach.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, TikTok is wild. That's really cool. That's awesome. It's like, don't spend the money on building the product, but like, let's just test out these ideas online and see what we can monetize off of.
And he was saying they tested it. I forget the name of it. They found a new paywall software where you can experiment with putting the paywall in different places. And actually, by bringing the paywall straight to open as soon as you open the app, it has a higher conversion rate than if it's like a week later or you have a free trial. So it's interesting to experiment. Is there anything you see in the content world in terms of advertising that you don't like or that negatively impacts the quality of the content for you and your experience with it?
I mean, take a look at like Forbes.com or like any of these old legacy news sites. It's like you're like kind of like trying to like look through like a small window because it's just clustered with ads, and it's like I don't want to pay for that. Like all these articles are the same. You guys are putting out the same content. Like just show me the content. Like you already have the ads. You don't need to like make the window so small.
Have you heard of Sigma OS, the browser?
No, what's that?
It's a new browser and it blocks all the ads. So I don't know how it works, but you can just read the actual content, which is cool. You should check it
Okay,
out.
that'll solve my problem. I'll try that. But other than that, I do know like a bunch of people in the newsletter space because I mean I'm a part of it, so I've become friends with a bunch of like really phenomenal newsletters that have actually monetized. And the advertising in newsletters is like because there's so many now, the supply of like advertisers has gone down. Like there's only so many times you can sell to this kind of buyer or this person that like they're just seeing less interest in ad buyers. And so I think we're gonna like we're starting to see the paywalls go up for independent writers, and then the paywalls are going down for the large writer, like the large like actual publishers. So it's like a weird like there's a weird balancing that's happening. I'd say like look, like content drives when it is really opinionated and polarizing, and whether it can like spark some sort of, you know, chemical balance in your brain that makes you like freak out. So like all the scare tactics I think that are going on in like mainstream media, I think people are just tired of them, honestly, and they're over it, and so they're gonna have to come out with something better. Hopefully that's quality content. Hopefully that's quality research, real conversations, not fluffy things, not just like bait and switches or like, you know, flashy hooks, but real good quality, you know, research and publishing. So I don't know. I really don't spend any time on TikTok. I don't know that world. I don't even have the app. But and like once I started to hang out on Twitter and like kind of understand like that's like more of like a social community rather than like I don't know, Instagram really isn't. It's kind of just like DMing friends videos at this point. It's been cool to see, but yeah, like well yeah, I'm not really entirely sure, but like I just think content just has to get better. I think that's like the main thing here. It's like we're going to be able to tell the difference between a ChatGPT article and one that's not, and why not like have someone really put in the time and effort to craft a good story and a good narrative, and like the good stories are going to set themselves apart from all the fluffy clickbait, like weird articles.
Yeah. I just get super worried when I see new media companies like resorting to old tactics like clickbait, and like loads of podcasts and things have teams of people who just iterate the thumbnails to like generate views by sparking people's like monkey brain to be like, oh, what's this? I'll click on that. They look shocked. And I hope that, I mean, I guess that's like, it is what it is. But I hope that there's still like the core creators who really do focus on quality content can continue to find their audience in a sea of like attention grabbing media outlets. Do you see that as a
Yeah,
trend?
I think so. I mean, people are starting to like really own their audience and their platforms, like Pirate Wires. I mean, they're
Oh,
very like polarizing on Twitter, like holy crap. But their content that they put out, like their conversations on their podcast, they're so good. They're like really thoughtful. And they have like all these different sides and elements to them, and they really make you think, and like they're real conversations to be had right now. And they're like it's quite neutral. Like if you actually like listen to their stuff or read their opinions, like they're quite neutral. Like it's not like one way or the other, but I think above all else they care about morality. So if that's your driving factor, that's great. Like no more of this corruption, but like let's expose quality. I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely like a changing world. So I think hopefully like the large companies start to pivot back to like real journalism.
what gets you most excited about all the trends happening in VC and content and the internet at the moment?
I think the change is good. I think um every now and again you do need to take a step back and like understand what's going on around you. I think that this is really that moment. Like COVID happened, ZERP happened, there was a huge influx into the tech world. Now people are taking a step back and they have to audit and understand, like, did we build a business here? Is this a business? Am I running this as a tech CEO? Did I sign up for the kinds of returns and like pressure and growth that is required of a tech company, a VC backed company? Like they're gonna run hard, like they've got to run hard, but they have to run hard in the right direction. And I've seen some really phenomenal founders that have been able to adapt and maneuver through that. So I hope that more teams are capable of doing that and can kind of like ride the wave, but also take the time to take a step back and like reflect, like, is this the business? Are we going to do this? Can we incorporate these new tools? Are we even relevant? Like, do we need to exist? Unfortunately. But the change is good. There's going to be a lot more change to come this year. Things are developing fast. And yeah, it's kind of like a little bit of a wait and see, but do the research. And I'm doing the research. I mean, I think it's fun. Like I did a deep dive on like AI infrastructure and what that even means, and cloud computing and developer like tools, like all of the really technical stuff that I didn't know before, because I think understanding the technical side of things right now will help you have a better understanding of like where the moat is or like what the viability is um, in the long term. So yeah, between all of that and like just the continued um, interest and like exposure and knowledge and access to tools and information is beneficial. Like let's just hope like it continues to grow in a very positive direction.
I was reading the LA Hard Tech 50, which is a newsletter called Always at the Egg.
Yeah, that's Nick Kim's. He's a partner at Upfront.
Oh, no way. Do you know him?
I used to work
Oh,
with him.
oh,
He's awesome.
oh, cool. In his newsletter, he put the year that everything was established. And SpaceX 2002, it just dawned on me that is during the dot-com bubble. There's Elon and like whoever the team around him were already thinking about this. I just find that so incredible. And obviously lots of the engineers from SpaceX are now the ones who are at companies like Varda and all the other ones. So I personally think it's very exciting to see.
Yeah, there's always lots of things being built at the same time. It's just you never know what, because there might not have been exposure to it. Like I don't know what, some lucky people got exposure to SpaceX early on, and I'm sure they're very, very happy right now. But they were probably also like right now, right? Like, okay, so we have like this huge AI wave, and then we also have like this hard tech moment. And so a lot of people are paying attention to AI, and then like some people are paying attention to the hard tech, like defense tech movement. And then others aren't paying attention to other things. Like it's funny, like I like to look at stocks. I work in finance, and like Abercrombie and Fitch had like the best run up in the last like 2-3 year period ever. But no one's talking about it because they're all talking about Nvidia. Like so it's interesting to see like it really just matters what people are putting emphasis on and like where the SEO is at the time.
Yeah. So true. It's like I always think this about, to be honest, about life and the universe in general. Like depending on where you're standing, your perception of reality is completely different to someone else's. So it's like important. It's very important who you're speaking to, where you are, and like what information you're reading. What sort of info inputs do you have then, other than Sourcery?
Oh
What
my
comes in?
gosh. Yeah, I input too much information. I gotta just lower that. But I listen to audiobooks on like many different topics. Like I love science and like health, as well as business. And I like to learn everything. I'm constantly learning everything at any moment. But I just take in too much information. I'm learning through podcasts, through people's like newsletters, like everything that I put in Sourcery is something that I've read or listened to. Like there's not something I put in there that I don't. And that's usually like in the last week.
Anything of late that's really been interesting to you or that stood out?
Let's see. So I just read Morgan Housel's book, Same as Ever,
Oh
and
yeah,
that
how
was oh my gosh, it was amazing. I mean, I think everybody should read that. It was a really good summary and encapsulation of like the world and human behavior and like serendipity and building things. It's just a really good encapsulation of like everything that's going on and kind of like reset and like course correct and like have a better understanding of what's going on in the world.
Yeah, that's really cool. I read his article on the things you wouldn't expect about being rich that actually aren't that good, and he writes so well, and his points are so true.
Yeah.
Like he said, and I would definitely recommend that to anyone. There's one like
Yeah.
I think the general gist was like when you become successful, everyone starts telling you that you're the best at everything because everyone wants something. So you lose a whole input and feedback loop. It's basically just you on your own at that point, it dawned on me that is mental, and it made me very much appreciate the stage that I'm in right now because I had such a direct feedback loop, a bit too direct, but it's good.
Yeah, it's funny. Like when I was recording my first podcast with Xander, like we did a couple of tries. Like I had not done it before. And like the first one was probably like maximum personality and a little bit goofiness because I was like, I feel so silly doing a podcast. Like, really, I'm doing a podcast now. Like, I made a newsletter, now I'm doing a podcast. This is so predictable. Um, but like I sent it to my family, and my mom is like the harshest with criticism and feedback,
No way.
constructive criticism. And so she gave me some good feedback and that kind of thing. And so then, we took it to the next one, tried it again. And then we did the third one. We're like, okay, like, let's just sit down. Let's have a conversation. Like, this is going to be spread out to the world. It might be boring. It might not be, but like, let's get the information right. Like, let's do it well. Like, let's make a high quality thing. But yeah, I mean, it's good. Like we're both like in a period where maybe we're not successful yet, but we're still learning and building things, and people are probably going to tell us what they think.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. Do you think your mum will watch this?
I hope so. She should. She should absolutely. Like, let's hope she gets to this timestamp, right? Like,
What's her name?
Jill.
Jill. Okay, well, Jill, I would also appreciate some feedback. I need some harsh feedback.
Oh boy.
So my thought with this podcast is like I have my art, which is creative website development, and that's what I want to get. I want to be the best at that. So this is like supplementary to that. So like there's people like Danny Miranda or Founders Podcast who have put so much work into the episodes and it shows. But my thought is like it's a good way to connect, it's a good way to meet people and often open conversations without trying to force topic points can like lead to some more new insights. Especially my feeling was that the podcast landscape was all successful people, which is really interesting and entertaining. But I wanted to hear questions of like younger people asking the successful people what they think, because it's like a new viewpoint to get more information from and a different type of information. So I'm curious, what were you upset with, or what didn't sit right with you about the first episode that meant you had to retake it?
I was just too giggly.
What's
I
wrong with
was
that?
just too giggly. I don't know. If I'm gonna create my first episode, I can't be giggling the whole time. Like, but it's okay. Personality is fine. I'm just kind of like that. I'm a happy, giggly person.
Well, I think it's really cool that you're doing your own thing and you've had the gusto to try these things. And yeah, I love the newsletter and I hope you continue to do all of the above.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on, Ollie. I really like reaching out. That was great. I appreciated that.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. I hope we can have a conversation again at some point and see where we both got to. In fact, where do you see yourself going then with Sourcery over the next year or 18 months?
I mean, hopefully I'm making money off of it. Hopefully I have paid subscribers. I'll have a podcast out. I want to create more like long written analyst-y research reports and just opinion pieces on the tech world. It's funny because like now I have an outside-ish perspective and I can kind of share more of that. So I think it'll be a fun experiment. I very much take a lot of this stuff as like experimental and just testing it, see what people like, see if I'm having fun. If I'm not having fun, I won't do it, but just keep it low stress and just fun.
Yeah, nice. That's one of Mike, also Capital, who I had on. He's like, have fun and play to win. Those are the two things.
Yeah. And look, when you're having fun, other people want to have fun with you. So
yeah, definitely. All right, Molly. Well, thank you so much. I'm definitely rooting for you, and I think you're great. I think your newsletter is amazing. I think everyone should subscribe. So yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And everyone should subscribe to this podcast because this is an amazing podcast.
Yeah, so far I've done one YouTube video for one subscriber. So at this rate, it's going to take me a while. I would like to up those numbers if anyone can help.
We're going to up those numbers.